Hi there, this is Alvin, and welcome to the Kickstart Commerce Podcast, where we share search marketing and domain name investing strategies to help you grow your business. In today's episode, I'll discuss why I believe domain investors should develop a handful of domains from their domain portfolio into simple websites. I'll cover why domain investors should consider domain development to begin with, types of domains that are ideal for development, types of realized revenue for developed domains, and then easy, affordable website builder tools to use for development. As well, I'll share a few of my own development experiences, but first things first, let's talk about why develop in the first place. So, why should domain investors even consider developing? Most domain investors, truth be told, love to do the buying. Everybody's in on the buying. It's the thrill of the game of getting into a bid. You see a name that you like and you get into a bidding war, or you feel like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this domain actually fell through an auction, or it's not hand registered. And I know that my idea is the greatest thing since sliced bread, so I'm going to go ahead and register it. And before you know it, you've gone from 2 to 3 to 5 to 2 handfuls to hundreds, if not thousands of domains that either you had an idea for it and never moved on it, or you have a situation to where you just, let's be honest, you've gone on a domain buying binge, and so you're not doing any outbound efforts. You don't have any of the domains parked. You're not using any landing pages. You're just simply out there buying domains, and so that's happened to more than a few domain investors. I would probably go out on a limb and say it's probably happened anywhere to 80 to 90% of domain investors that have definitely lost their shirt, if not their house, home, or car. So, I always come back to, when coming into domain investing, I encourage new domain investors to definitely take a moment to consider developing a simple website. Now, what I mean by a simple website is a website that doesn't necessarily, I guess you'd say, need upkeep. So if anything, most people would say, well, you're talking about a mini site. Not exactly per se, because the sites that I've developed and have learned through the years, now that it's, probably some 10 years into this, almost 15 years into this, is that the sites that I've developed have been more of a niche website, but it was devoted to actually bringing value to customers, and it wasn't just a, hey, go and rank only to get traffic and all of that. No, it was actually really focused on bringing value. And so I encourage domain investors to consider development based on, number one, just really, if you look at your domain not developed, so an undeveloped domain versus a developed domain, you've basically, by developing, provided a method that will actually add value to the domain. And so, for instance, there are sites that I see, or rather domains that I see that are in auction, where someone built a business on this domain. They spent their hard-earned dollars to market this domain. And so most of these domains are used in social media. So think of sites like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. And so they have active link profiles. Well, these links are equivalent to having currency. And so whereas you may have, let's say you have a hand registered domain that's never been developed, has no links, it has, I guess you'd say, an intrinsic value, but it's not as tangible, or it's not reaching its most impactful benefit or value, if you will, in terms of if it were truly developed. And so, like I said, it's more about having a method to improve that domain's value. It's like having land, but then the land is the domain that's undeveloped. Yes, it'll go up over time, but it can also go up exponentially when you have, a building, or, I guess you'd say I can't even think of the tower, a skyscraper. So you have a skyscraper built on this land, and it increases in exponential value. And so that's how that's one of the reasons in terms of why a domain investor. Another reason is that developing actually beats parking, in my opinion, and offers residual income when it is developed correctly. And so when you develop in such a way that it actually provides value to your visitors, and then those visitors in turn begin to share the website throughout, I guess you'd say the World Wide Web, then you grow greater and greater and greater exposure, which then increases the value. And then if you start adding in residual income by way of advertising or other methods, then that way, you look at it and you go, well, that beats having an undeveloped domain to a certain extent, or in most cases. And then you look at parking, and parking hasn't been what it was. I mean, it's been over a decade since, I guess, parking had its heyday of, I guess, having, buying all these domains and just sitting back and making thousands per month. There likely are cases that are out there, but likely is the case that that's not the same anymore. I mean, you probably do good if you even make, anywhere from $50 to $100, depending on the grade of the domain. So the next reason why, or the next reason that domain investors should consider domain development is that, and this is one, in my opinion, that I think is missed quite often, and it likely, in my opinion, it has nothing to do with the domain per se, but it has more to do with the domain investor, and it's development adds an additional transferable, adds additional transferable business skills. And so when you develop, or let's even take another approach, when it's not developed, you're not necessarily really learning, you're just holding it. It's almost like having a CD, a bond, or I know they used to have what's called these savings bonds way back in the day, and I know I just dated myself there on that one. But you're not really doing anything. You just went in, you purchased something, and you're just letting it sit. Whereas when you develop, what has happened, or what my experience has been, is that I've developed skills that were not necessarily there, I guess you'd say native or innately, but I actually begin to grow those muscles. And very much like working out, when it's hard to begin with, development is hard. I mean, it truly is. And we'll get into some ideas here in a moment. But the main thing is there are skills that to be learned. So for instance, in terms of some of my development experience, I've learned about lead generation, about and one of the great things I've learned about lead generation is it forces me to actually go and learn a business model. So for instance, I have a firewood site, and it's a hyperlocal site. It's Round Rock Firewood, roundrockfirewood.com. And I don't know anything about firewood, but guess what? You can hire folks from Odesk, Fiverr to write these articles. They're not going to be the best English, just depends on who you get to write the article. However, I can edit faster than I can create. And so I would get people to write the articles. And in this case, this is just a one-page website that allows for an order to come through. When an order comes through, then I basically can send that order over to a partner that lives, or rather operates his business not too far from where I live. And so it forced me to learn about his business, the firewood business, in terms of, well, when are peak times, when are low times, what's likely going to cause someone to buy firewood, even the different types. And so you can see there on the site, if you go to roundrockfirewood.com, then you'll be able to see it's a simple page, simple one page, simple order form. It comes to me, I send a copy to him, and then he basically, if the order's fulfilled, I get a check in the mail. That didn't really take much, but at the same time, it taught me more about lead generation. It taught me a little bit about search marketing. It also definitely brought me into a relationship that I didn't have before. And then not only that, it helped me in terms of being able to communicate, being able to write, speak more clearly. And then it also, because I have a development background, It also helped me to streamline my approach in development because I didn't really want to spend a lot of time creating an authority site. I wanted to try out or experiment with a site that was simple in nature and really didn't cause, or I guess you'd say, I really didn't have much of an investment in it in terms of, I don't have to go out and get business licenses and all of this. I don't have to, the barrier of entry of creating a simple site for lead generation, it was low. And so, but those are transferable business skills, the lead generation, search marketing, partnering, communicating, writing, programming, etc. These are skills that you can take right out of domaining, or you can take from one domain to the next domain, or from one industry to another industry. And so that to me is like one just nugget of truth that is missed oftentimes in terms of domain investors and development. Most domain investors are like, that's not my skill set. And I'll talk a bit more in depth about, it may not be your skill set, but there are easy tools that have been provided and created and made. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. Nevertheless, they're there, that you can actually use to cut your development time and cost. The last thing, though, that gets real interesting is that when considering to develop, one of the opportunities is that you take a domain that's not developed and you develop it. That increases your opportunity for greater revenue upside upon an exit. So if someone comes to you and says, hey, I saw you develop this site, would you think about selling it? Well, now we can get into talking about, what are the multiples of revenue? And so I have, a handful, actually 2 handful sites, probably anywhere from 10 to 15 different sites that are like hyper local. And they're very much like that Round Rock Firewood, to where I've created those sites. Those sites are now ranking. And then essentially I've partnered with other people. Sometimes it's lead generation. Sometimes it's actually advertising, a banner ad or something like that. But nevertheless, I've had the opportunity to respectfully decline, opportunities for buyout. But nevertheless, what happens is once that domain gets ranked, now instead of the domain, let's say being, and we'll just be generous here and say that a domain is worth $1,000 by itself. Well, because I developed it and it got ranked. It has an active backlink profile, domain page authority, all are doing well. Well, instead of $1,000, that may be, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. And it's all about, what you want to put into it. And so, never underestimate the power of, and like I said, we're focused more so on simple sites and not advanced sites. I look at advanced sites of thinking like e-commerce. I've done more than my fair share of e-commerce websites, and it's hard. Yes, there are tools that are out there, but the reality is it's a simple sites, so simple 5-page, 1-page, 3-page sites, or even just blogs, those are lower barrier to entry than e-commerce, because with some e-commerce, you got to worry about shipping. Obviously, you can do drop shipping services, but then you have shipping costs to worry about, and then whether or not product made it there. You also have to deal with returns on products. And so don't necessarily go off and start trying to do e-commerce sites, but really focus on how can I create or develop a domain that is really based around having an informational website that's simple in nature, that is not reliant upon me updating it all the time to keep its ranking. Focus on something simple, 3-page, 5-page, and truly add value. Don't just create any old article and put it out there. Nobody wants to read that stuff. And in the search engines, they know it, and they'll let you know it by not ranking you. And then you will feel that, hey, I listened to Alvin on Kickstart Commerce and he said do this and it didn't happen. And likely is the case, you did it, but you did it wrong. And so that being said, do what's right. Do what's right. don't try to game the search engines or any of that business. Truly put out content that people can use, that people are more than willing to share. And so those are just some reasons. Those are reasons that I tell most domain investors, hey, you should really consider domain development. Next up on the list, let's talk about some different ideas. Now, I talked about some of them, but one of the things in terms of development, most people try to follow what's hot. So they try to follow current events. And so, like, as of this taping, matter of fact, this very day, there was a Santa Fe school shooting just outside of Houston. And so let me go ahead and say, bad taste if you're out there registering, domain names and you're trying to profit off of an unfortunate event, especially where people are losing their lives. Bad taste. Don't do that. Or if you are, like I have, I believe it's like Tornado Relief Fund. I have it redirected to redcross.org. And I do that, one, because I don't want to see it in somebody else's hands, doing something illegitimate or ill-advised, and just don't do it. Don't chase the news cycle and then try to develop domains that are behind that. You'll definitely waste your time. But one area that I do suggest you take a look at is really starting with your own life experience. And that's where, for me, so for instance, I live in Austin, Texas, and based around here in Austin, I mean, we know a few things. People come to see the Bats. People come to see or participate in South by Southwest. We have a number of festivals here: Urban Music Fest, Austin Reggae Festival, Austin City Limits, ACL, and the list goes on. We're not short on festivals. And so if you wanted to put a site together around all the different festivals here in Austin, that could likely work. I mean, you could truly become a niche, yet the authoritative site for festivals in Austin. It's going to take a lot of work. And that's the next question of, does your life experience, are you going to have to spend a lot of time learning something new versus with your life experience, you likely already know more than the average person knows. And because of that, you have that first mover advantage because you moved first, but then you were also knowledgeable. And so I say start with your life experiences. Just think about what you know about. When you start, I know a lot of people look at sites and they're like, man, if I could just get 1 million people around the world to get on my site, well, that's great. But the reality is that's going to take some time to actually grow. And so for me, I tell most people, hey, start local. Start right there in your own city. Figure out something that your city does well or people go, and especially if it's like a tourist attraction or just a frequently visited venue that may not have a website dedicated to it. That's likely an inroad into creating a domain. Now, obviously, that removes some domains like brandable domains and generic domains, and it puts you more in line to like geo. But at the same time, I also go, if you know a lot about marketing, but you get into a hyper niche of marketing in a certain way, hey, why not go for it? You got the first mover, you have the knowledge, you have the experience, the life experiences and stories to back it up. And it likely will also, the other thing that happens with life experiences is that you're coming from a place of passion. Because you're interested in it. You're not doing it to make money as much as you are just going, I would do this anyway without making money. Money is the byproduct of what I do when I love doing what I do. And people can tell it. They can tell it in your content. They can, they can even sense it. And so, for me, I think the idea when you're starting to ideate about, well, what domain can I develop? Start with your life experience, and then from there build out. And the biggest decision from building out of your life experience is going to be whether or not you build a niche site versus an authority site. And so the authority site is more broad reaching versus a niche site is really like a hyper niche. Now, and you'll hear the phrase oftentimes from people that'll say, hey, the riches are in the niches. I definitely believe it, but I also, just from my learned life experiences of developing domain names for, like I said, the last 15 or so years for different sites and my own development, it takes a while. I mean, I've had some sites that I developed 5-6 years ago that are now just generating residual income of a couple $100s a month. But that took years. Now, granted, I set it up, I added content here and there, but then, I said, well, I just let it be. Fortunately, search engines come around, they rank these sites. The rest is history now. And I'll get to what some of those sites are. But in terms of niche versus authority development, one of the things, so I have a site, and just to kind of give a backstory here. So let's see, about 4 years ago, I actually began working at a church. And so I worked at this church, and one of the projects that I had was, or rather I did a project for a church, not necessarily, I guess, that this project was the thing, if you will. Nevertheless, did a project, and it was actually migrating the church from one church management software to another church management software. Well, in the process of things, they both had, actually one of them only had an API. The other, they gave us XML files. And so I then figured out the new system had an API, developed, and if you're wondering what an API is, it's a application programming interface. So just think of two people handshaking and think of those two people as systems. So it's a way to be able to get data or access data within a system without using the native interface. So like a web like a website interface, you're actually using a programmable interface. And so with this API, I was able to read the XML files from the old church management software and put them into the new. Well, through the course of this, I realized that the new company, did not have great documentation on their API. And so then thinking that, man, if I went through this, and at the time, this church management software they had, I believe it was like over 3,000 churches or customers, if you will, that had purchased their product. And one thing that I realized about churches, and it's not all churches, but more small to medium than, or rather, I'd say more small churches than medium to large churches. Medium to large churches tend to have technical staff resources or, a combination of relationships to get these things done, whereas small churches don't necessarily have the technical staff or the technical capability or the networking resource, so be it. That being said, what I thought about was, man, if I struggle to get our data from one system from an old system to a new system, there are likely others out there, especially knowing that there are 3,000 churches. So I embarked upon an effort to create a website where I would then create a tutorial once a week and post that tutorial. And the church management software that I did this for is called Church Community Builder. And so they go by the acronym CCB. And lo and behold, I went and I registered ccbtutorials.com, and no, CCB was not trademarked. So it let me off the hook, but at the same time, it gave me something that most people would likely go to the web and search, CCB tutorials. So that's been a little over 4 years ago. And from that, essentially what has happened now is, because I put out a weekly tutorial, I'm now seen as the leading expert in terms of the API usage of the CCB. So when CCB has folks who want custom development, my name comes out, my site comes to mind, people are directed there. But that all came out of a passion of wanting to teach people how to use a system, knowing that in most cases, most of these people were not going to be technical people. Nevertheless, I was able to develop that. There is a Bluehost ad. I do have a couple of videos. And so I do make affiliate income, but I also make revenue in terms of having customers contact me about development or programming projects. That's a niche site. Not too many people are going to hop into this and want to give competition. They could, but I'm already 4 years ahead. I had that first mover. I learned it. I created a site. I got ahead of the wave. Now people are using my site as the de facto site in terms of the API. So you take that niche site versus an authority site, which in that same space for churches, it's another site called churchtechtoday.com. That is more broad reaching in terms of all sorts of different church technologies, not just church management systems, but it covers all church technology. And so I look at that and I go, I don't necessarily have the energy or the passion to do that. Could I? I could probably pay people to go out and learn different sections and categories of church technology and how it's used from small to medium to large to mega churches. I could do that, but I go, that's not my passion. That's not my lane. And so that being said, that's the difference between a niche and an authority site. Now, in terms of getting ideas, I know you're sitting there probably thinking, okay, well, how does this relate to your portfolio? So in terms of where and how you go about searching, I mean, obviously you can hand register a domain, or you can look at expired auction platforms, or you can also do a third party purchase where you buy it from someone. I've had the most success either hand registering, but I really had the most success doing expired auction domains and purchasing those and then developing those. And so, for instance, just a couple weeks ago, I was running a search on GoDaddy's platform, and I put in the word automatic. And for whatever reason, I looked and was looking, and it was like on the third page, there was this website, or rather domain name, that said automaticpassword.com. I have a development background. I know what type of password strength and security that most policies provide. And then I challenged myself. I said, you know what? The domain was in closeout for like $5, add another $8 on. So it's like $13 to $15 when it's all said and done that I paid for this domain. I waited a week. I got the domain in my possession. I then set up a one-page site that basically now you can go out and randomly create a password. And so you may go, well, big deal. All right, well, I put an AdSense on there. And so now, just only a couple of weeks old, I mean, it's making, I think, like $1 to $2 a day, more closer to the dollar than the two. I mean, there have been a few anomaly days to where, like I had one day where it was $5. But for the most part, it's going to be right there at that dollar. But think about that. That's a one-page site that if people click on that ad, great. But I'm also providing them a service. If you have a hard time creating passwords, I mean, think about it. That's the brand now, automaticpassword.com. So you can go out and find domains like that have, and I didn't even check the history backlink profile. I did it because I had life experience that would lead me to develop something so quick. And literally, I got it that day. I spent about an hour spinning this up, and we're off to the races. And so I challenge you to go do the same thing in terms of your life experience. Get on some of these platforms and start looking. Yes, you're going to see other domains, but don't follow the rabbit trail. Stay in focus in terms of your life experience and look for domains that you know something about and buy them, develop them, put content on them. And then, once it starts ranking, then you'll want to see about adding, some sort of revenue opportunity, which is basically the next reason to develop a domain. So we want to talk about the types of revenues developed when developing domains. And one of them I already talked about, which is partnership and lead generation. And so I already spoke to you a bit about just the Round Rock Firewood site and how I can partner there. I also did a site, roundrockacrepair.com, and it ranked for about 4 years without, updating content. And the first year I got a partnership to where it was on an honor system, to where we worked out this agreement that, hey, he would just pay, for the leads that he would receive. I could see the phone calls. I could see the emails that came through from the site using Google Voice, and then just a contact form that copied me as well as my partner. Well, I wasn't licensed to do the work, but this person was. He had a company, and so I just set up the site. He was getting these leads. He would send sometimes anywhere from, $200, $400 check per month. And then I was talking with someone who was in the business, and they were telling me a little bit more about the business. So hence I learned the business. And then I figured out that during the summer months, they were making a killing because they were putting in here in Texas. I mean, we're talking about consecutive 100-degree days, and they're putting in AC units sometimes at, anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 at minimum a pop. And some of the houses here in Texas have 2 units. And so then that's when I got hip to the game and said, well, wait a minute. I'm kind of falling short or leaving money on the table. So then for years 2 on over into 4, I was basically able to sign an agreement to where I got a percentage of the business. And that took it from being like 200 to 400 to making anywhere from 1,500 to 1,800. But again, that site had to remain ranked. I didn't keep up with it. It fell out of ranking. And so now I'm going to have to go back and attempt to rebuild its credibility, in terms of reaching more customers, in terms of having better search ranking. So partnership lead gen opportunities, if you do those, let me definitely encourage you to focus on high margin business. Don't come after low barrier to entry business. What I mean by that, don't go after like lawn service companies. Don't go after pet sitting. You want to go after higher margin. And so, one of the keywords that come to mind is something like mesothelioma. Go look up that keyword, and I guarantee you, like, it's probably $100 a keyword, if not more than that. So you want to get around areas that are high in margin so that when you provide them a lead, they don't mind paying you a couple $100 or $1,000 for a specific type of lead. And so the lead generation, like I said, they're a bit more challenging only because you're looking for a targeted market. And, ultimately you've got to know a little bit more than some of these other opportunities. The next opportunity, obviously, everybody has likely heard of or know about is Google AdSense. And so back in the day, they used to do what's called made for AdSense sites, and Google would ban you, the site as well as your account, for doing or participating in made for AdSense sites, which a lot of people were out there spinning articles, purchasing exact match domain names, spinning articles, and just a whole lot of different linking schemes that weren't necessarily legit. Yes, it got you ranking, but it also got you kicked out of AdSense. And the crazy thing about that is you're banned for life. So, if you use your social security number and you go make a for AdSense site, then you get clipped, well, you just blew it. You'll have to go to some other ClickBank or another PPC type system, or that basically, I guess you'd say that, would allow you to be able to advertise. Next up are affiliate sites. And so, so it's affiliate sites like Commission Junction, ShareASell.com, or Amazon affiliates. And with these sites, what I recommend is, I had way back in the day, I had this site called Electric Chipper, or it was Electric Chipper or electricchippers.com. And so I focused in on writing about chippers, and I hired people to write about electric chippers and all the ins and outs, the pros and cons, how to buy one, how to save one, how to refurbish one, all these many different things about this. And so it did actually fairly well. It was more of an Amazon affiliate site because I would write all the content and then I would link over to a shop section that was nothing more than an Amazon widget that would list all of the electric chippers. Now, the interesting thing about the site is no one ever bought a chipper. However, but because Amazon, they basically give you a 24-hour period that if anything gets added into the cart, then you get a cut. Small percentage, but you still get a cut. And so, I've seen everything from like a sewage cap for an RV to Moscow Mule, I guess the Moscow Mules that you drink out of, ordered, margarita mix. I mean, I've seen a bunch of things just ordered. I've also seen, situations to where someone clicks through the site that has, let's say it's electric chippers. But then I also had a time to where someone had purchased like $1,600 worth of luggage, which, ultimately turned in, I think after it was all said and done, they had a few other things in there, but it ended up being like $200. But it's one of those things that you look at and you go, wow, like, okay, they came through the site for chipper, but then once they got to Amazon, they just went kind of crazy and started looking through everything. And next thing you know, bam, they, rang up a pretty good size order, and there's a commission coming through. Another opportunity that you have when you develop domains is advertising. And so you can create your own ad space, but let me say it's a bit challenging because that means that you have to spend a lot of time getting traffic, sustaining traffic, and people want to see the numbers. And then most importantly, people want to see results, that if they put a banner ad on your site, they want to know not only are they getting people from your site to their site, but are the people actually converting? And so advertising is a bit much harder. Obviously, AdSense and affiliate, that means that you lose a share of the cut, but in my opinion, they're a lot more easier than trying to do the advertising. And then finally, e-commerce. And like I said, I don't encourage domain investors to go out and do it. If it is your life experience and you have it, knock yourself out. But I don't necessarily recommend doing that in terms of simple sites. And then last but not least, so we've talked about why you should consider domain development as a domain investor. And then we'd also talked about different ideas where you can get different ideas. And, I shared with you a little bit about the whole niche versus authority. And then we just wrapped up with the revenues for developing domains, or the revenue opportunities. And then last but not least, what I want to share with you is that there are easy and affordable website builder tools to use for development. Like I said, I have a background, and so it's no big deal for me to set up an HTML page or a PHP page, get it connected to a database. I got to sign up. One of the main things, though, that I want you to focus on is don't necessarily be focused on becoming a developer, and don't don't look for things to be perfect. I see oftentimes people like, man, I want to develop it and it's got to be perfect. No, get it going, get out there, because once you get going, you're going to learn some things that you wouldn't have learned had you just waited until things were perfect. No, get out of the gate, start moving. And so one of the first tools that I recommend you taking a look at is Wix, Wix.com. And it is a great tool for developing a simple, optimized website, that's search engine friendly. But then not only that, it's affordable. But then they also offer over 500 plus or 500 plus templates. So whatever you do when you develop, I encourage you, if it's your first development opportunity, look for a theme. Look for a website builder tool. Look for something that has already done all the heavy lifting, the coding, everything for you, to where you're just pointing and clicking. That's what Wix brings to the table. Now, the downside is, even though it is affordable, you do pay for add-on services. So things like if you wanted an email account associated with the site or e-commerce, those are things that you just have to watch out for. And so as you're doing it, yes, see how intuitive the system is, but also look out for the add-on. The next one that I've seen a lot of people use is Site Builder. And it's very much like Wix. The only difference is it's slimmed down in terms of it provides you like 13 basic layouts to choose from. Setup is a bit more involved. I looked into it, and it looks like it probably takes hours to set up, whereas like Wix, you go in, you set it up, and bam, you're working on the site. You got it live at least within anywhere from about 15 to 30 minutes. That's not necessarily the case with Site Builder, where it could sometimes take you hours, anywhere from 3 to 6 hours. And so, just kind of keep that in mind. The next tool is using Weebly.com, Weebly.com. And so it's a middle of the road type of a website builder with about 80 themes that you can browse, but it also too can be add-on intensive. So as you begin to add things on, then obviously your bill gets more expensive, and that's something that you must consider. How much are you willing to spend? And you can't say, hey, I'm going to try this for a year. No, I tell most development efforts, I go, hey, at least 24 months at minimum, and be prepared to even move that out to 36 months before you really begin to see consistent results. And so last but not least, if you don't want to try those Wix.com, Site Builder, Weebly.com, then one thing that I highly suggest that you get acclimated with is either WordPress.com or using you're a reputable web hosting company. So, I look at something like, hey, you might want to use Bluehost, HostGator, GoDaddy, DreamHost, whatever web host provider you feel comfortable with. Most of them provide a one-click WordPress installation or install of WordPress. And so what that does, that in my opinion, has changed the landscape. You should be able to develop more than 3 sites. I mean, if it's just push a button, select your domain, they handle all of the install and setup. So everything is gone from manual to now being automated, as well as handle your updates. And the beautiful thing that I like about WordPress is that it provide most, and I say most, I think the last time I checked, it was like over 70% of websites are done using WordPress today. And so basically WordPress has gotten so big that it has a community of developers that are always creating. I'm just floored at times by when I go and search for a plugin, the number of plugins that I find. And not only the number, but the high quality, the number of high quality plugins of a specific item that I'm searching for. That, in and of itself, that decreases your development cost, as well as, the learning curve. It basically shortens that learning curve for you. And so I recommend using WordPress. They have free themes. They have paid themes that you can use. And it's just a lot easier, and it gets you down the path quicker to getting started, getting your content out there, getting ranked. And then once you get ranked and you can start seeing a bit of revenue coming in from some of the opportunities that we spoke of in the last section in terms of the revenue opportunities, you get those in place and you begin seeing a little bit of revenue come in. Then you'll be able to decide, okay, well, how much more do I want to invest in terms of this site that is already going, as well as invest in other sites. And so that's one of the things that, that I tell most people to really look at and embrace is like, start learning WordPress and just get comfortable with working within the web hosting provider setup, because there's no excuse that you couldn't be able to set up multiple sites within an hour. Matter of fact, I did a site today and purchased the domain, set up, basically pointed the domain to a web server, and then set up WordPress, had it going, found the theme, and I probably spent maybe about 4 hours, and that includes adding content to the site. And now the site's up. I also set up Google Analytics as well as Google Search Console, all within about a 4-hour period. And so, think about that. If you can do 2 sites a day, or let's just say you did a site a day. If you challenge yourself and said, okay, if I had 30 domains, can I set up a site a day? Now, you're going to have to figure out one thing that's different from from previous that is changing here in July 2018 is the fact that Google will expect for you to have a SSL certificate, which you can pay for that, or there are, I think it's like Let's Encrypt or Free Encrypt or something or another. One of the sites, you'll have to Google that, but they offer free SSL certs. So you have to learn about those, how to install those. But nevertheless, if you have a site that's only providing information, you don't necessarily need an SSL. It's only SSL if you're doing, so like my automatic password.com site, that really will, to a certain extent, it'll need SSL, one, because it should, and we're talking about password security, but anytime you have someone inputting things, so if people are searching for things or doing filtering of any sort, then you want to make sure that you have an SSL cert on that developed site. So that's just a side note there. Take that for what it's worth. The main point here is that there are more than enough easy, affordable website builder tools for you to use to develop your domains. No excuses. Get out there, get your hands dirty, get into it. And, and if you can't figure something out, man, shoot an email. I'd be happy to answer any emails or, send me a tweet. My handle is @AlvinBrown. And so shoot me a tweet if you run into any issues trying to develop, or shoot me an email at info@kickstartcommerce.com. I'd be more than glad to, help you, or if you have any questions, or, if you say, hey, Alvin, what's the difference between this and that? I'm here. I want to help you. I've lived the experience, have successful sites that are going right now, and looking for sites like automaticpassword.com to quickly develop and get them out there so that they can, start living and start ranking, and then hopefully start turning revenue. And so as I come to a close, we are finally coming to a close here. It's a little bit longer podcast today, but I think it's one that's well worth all the information that we've managed to pack inside. And so I hope and really I have a hope for domain investors, and I really truly encourage domain investors to consider the ideas that I've shared with you today about domain development. Yes, you can park your domains. Yes, you can sit and hold your domains and do no outbound sales. Yes, you can do outbound sales. Yes, you can just be the long hold type of person, or you can quick flip them. You can do all of those. But I think not all of your domains should be developed. But everybody has at least 3 domains that if you would just spend a little time to develop them, you could begin to turn revenue that not only pays for the domain renewal itself, hosting, but for your other domains. And so I leave you with this of just going, hey, assess your domain portfolio and identify 3 domains. That's it. Just identify 3 domains. Let's build out a simple site. Don't try to do anything more than 5 pages, or let's put it at 10. I'll give you 10 pages. Don't do anything more than 10 pages. Just put it, hey, let's see what we can do with 5 pages. Can we get something developed and out there? The search engines will then direct you to what you should do next and how you begin to rank. Don't forget to assess your life experiences. For if you're going to register, do a hand reg domain, or if it's an expired domain, or even a third party option, which I don't recommend that last one, but I highly recommend either doing a hand reg or even an expired domain with a live backlink profile. Nevertheless, before you buy those, think about your life experience. Does this domain give you the first mover advantage? If it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world, but I'm going to encourage you to make sure that you have the first mover, and don't just tell yourself that you first mover because you found it. No, truly have the experience, because if not, I can already tell you'll buy the domain, you'll get discouraged, then you'll say, well, this didn't work. And truth be told, it's like, no, you were never really transparent with yourself about your ability, your life experiences, and how will it lent itself to actually providing you an opportunity for success. So explore those life experiences, and then, really think about development as a way to diversify. Beyond flipping, beyond parking, beyond leasing, beyond long-term hold or long hold investing. Diversify yourself a bit. Anybody can buy a domain and hold it. Anybody can buy a domain and hopefully flip it. Often it's that former that people can buy them and hold them forever without a sale more than they can quick flip. And so that being said, look at development as that opportunity to diversify, your domain investing activities. And then last but not least, like I said, it goes back, and I can't drive this point home enough, is that consider development an opportunity to grow your knowledge and relationships more so than only focusing on making money. If you focus on making money and you don't have a passion, it will die, it will get old, and then you'll burn out. You'll look around and you'll say, this sucked, this didn't work, or it was fun while it lasted. But we're here to make it last. We're not here to, be a flash in a pan. No, focus on how these domains will bring you into further relationship, further knowledge. I can't tell you how many times that I use my knowledge of software development and partner with someone else who may have knowledge in a different area. But when we put my technical ability to their ability in terms of partnership, and we work out an agreement of how we're going to split revenues or how we're going to grow and support the cost of this endeavor, like that one puts you into relationship with someone else. Whereas most domainers, let's be honest, especially if you're part-time, even some in the arena full-time, if you don't have a support system, it's going to get lonely, and it's going to get lonely quick, and you're likely going to, quit. Because why? You don't have a support group when the days get hard, when things aren't going the way you'd like for them to go, or, when you just simply get discouraged. When you wake up and you're just like, man, I've not sold anything in a couple months or ever, and I've lost all this money, and there's nobody else. This must be, I'm the only person that this is happening to. No, you're not. Get in a support group. Start communicating with people, whether it be through Twitter, whether it be through LinkedIn, whether it be through Facebook, whether it be through emails. I answer emails on a daily basis of people who contact me. Hey, Alvin, can I get 30 minutes of your time? I want to run some ideas about you. I love that. I love being able to get on the phone, talk with one another, communicate, get in relationship with one another, and then begin to toss around different ideas. Because from me sharing ideas, there also is the reciprocation of me also getting ideas and some new ways of thinking. And so get around people. And like I said, I look at it as I'm not so much worried about making the money as much as I am making the connection to the person, as well as being exposed to the knowledge, because those two things will carry you into greater spheres of influence, of just accessibility. And so because of that, then money becomes a byproduct of those things. And so focus on the relationship and just growing your knowledge, and the money will come when you learn how to steward those relationships and that knowledge. And so with that, we're out of time. So thank you for tuning in to Kickstart Commerce, where we share search marketing and domain investing strategies to help grow your business. Last but not least, please subscribe to this podcast, whether that's by Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, however else you listen to this podcast. And then last but not least, please head over to kickstartcommerce.com, and in the sidebar there and to the right, look for the Daily Scoop newsletter. Sign up for it. I share a wealth of knowledge in terms of tips and tricks of search marketing, WordPress tips and tricks, as well as domain investing strategies to help you become a better domain investor, as well as just grow your business and grow your knowledge base. So with that, thanks, and that's all for now.